Therefore, here, one must be ruthless to establish their prestige. A cold light spread across his eyes, focusing on the middle-aged man who was retreating hastily. With a step forward, his right foot moved swiftly, like lightning, crashing through the air like a meteor. This middle-aged cultivator's cultivation wasn't very high. He hadn't yet reached the 5th decay of heaven and man. He was only at the 3rd decay stage. Just now, when he used his divine ability to launch a sneak attack on Wang Lin as he entered, he did so with nearly complete certainty of success. Under such a sneak attack, even someone more powerful would likely be injured. After all, anyone who gets sucked in would experience a brief moment of confusion and panic, and in that instant, it could be fatal or cause severe injury. Once injured, the surrounding cultivators would undoubtedly swarm to attack. Those who launched the sneak attacks had a mutual agreement. That agreement would still hold as long as they didn't encounter a strong opponent. Of course, there was also the possibility that a 3rd-step great power could be sucked into the crack, but 3rd-step great powers were exceedingly rare. To give up the opportunity of this treasure hunt out of fear of encountering one would be too unwilling. Moreover, the pressure from a 3rd-step great power was extremely intense. Even when entering the crack, it would be overwhelming, spreading widely, which, in turn, reduced the risk of error. However, what this middle-aged man never expected was that, although Wang Lin was not a 3rd-step great power, he didn't get sucked in. He stepped forward of his own accord, unruffled and unshaken. His divine ability, the moment it landed on Wang Lin, was reflected back with an overwhelming force, falling completely onto the middle-aged cultivator. The impact caused him to spurt blood, his body tumbling backward. His mind was shaken, his scalp tingled, and his soul seemed to leave his body. He screamed inwardly, realizing the situation was dire. Without thinking, he bolted toward the distance. When he saw Wang Lin's murderous gaze, his mind roared, his face turned deathly pale, and as he retreated, he gritted his teeth and changed direction, heading rapidly toward the mist below. The middle-aged cultivator reacted swiftly, clearly an experienced fighter. He vaguely sensed Wang Lin's immense power and knew that even if he retreated at full speed, he wouldn't escape the impending disaster. Thus, he plunged downward, hoping to enter the mysterious mist. Entering the mist might mean death, but not entering it would surely mean death. It was an easy yet difficult choice to make. Wang Lin's figure moved like a rainbow, howling through the air as he charged straight for the middle-aged cultivator, who was now sinking downward. When the cultivator saw Wang Lin approaching at such a rapid pace, his eyes gleamed with madness. He slapped his chest, spitting out a mouthful of blood from his essence spirit, using it to perform the devastating blood escape technique, greatly increasing his speed, crashing toward the mist below. He was almost there. He's quite a character, Wang Lin thought, analyzing the swift decision of his opponent, who was displaying all the wit and agility of a cultivator at the 3rd decay of heaven and man. However, the person he had attacked was no ordinary target. Now, he had to face Wang Lin. Without exposing his body immobilization art too soon, nor using the blood sword to kill his opponent before he could act, Wang Lin was not one to reveal such techniques lightly. Wang Lin raised his right hand as he advanced, suddenly striking downward toward the middle-aged cultivator, who was about to sink into the mist. A thunderous roar filled the air, and the soul subjugation seal manifested. The colossal sound attracted the attention of most of the surrounding cultivators. An illusory palm print appeared, its vast power swirling, moving with an unimaginable speed toward the middle-aged cultivator. At that very moment, the cultivator, now using blood escape, had just entered the mist and was about to speed downward. But as he did, he felt the mist churn violently. A force, as powerful as the wrath of the heavens, fell upon him with immense might. The massive palm print crashed down, as though splitting the heavens themselves, landing squarely on the mist. The mist quickly swirled and expanded outward, revealing a huge indentation in the form of a palm mark. A shrill scream was drowned out by the thunderous crash, and as the palm mark sank into the mist, a dreadful sound echoed, as if the palm print pierced through the mist, revealing a horrifying black hole, shaped like a palm print. Within it, a small cloud of blood mist and the residual energy of a destroyed essence spirit spread outward. The middle-aged cultivator had been pierced by the palm print, his body destroyed and his life snuffed out. This series of actions, though lengthy to describe, was actually over in a split second. With a single hand, Wang Lin killed the man, leaving behind the chilling palm mark in the mist. The surrounding mist slowly covered it up, though slightly dissipating. The power of that strike, however, did not go unnoticed by the nearby cultivators. Some cultivators' gazes flickered, and though they didn't seem afraid, they appeared cautious. Others looked at Wang Lin, their eyes filled with contemplation, as if they had seen him somewhere before. In the distance, behind a floating platform, a girl dressed in red stared at the scene with fear in her eyes. She was none other than the last surviving girl from the Annihilation clan. She and the man from the Feng Tian Wolf tribe had been separated when they were pulled into the ancient veil. The man had disappeared into an unknown area, but the young girl found herself with Wang Lin. Wang Lin's expression was calm as he took a step forward. He quickly approached a floating platform in front of him. The platform was about 1,000 feet wide, and upon it lay a grotesque head. Its eyes were wide open, radiating anger and resentment. At the center of its forehead was a huge blood hole, and its mark had been forcefully gouged out. But Wang Lin didn't need to look at the mark to know. This head was that of an ancient god. In front of the head, a 3-meter-tall banner was planted in the ground. The cloth hung motionless, as if it had lost all vitality. As he neared, Wang Lin immediately felt the strong, repelling force coming from the platform. There seemed to be an invisible barrier surrounding it, preventing anyone from stepping inside. Just as he was observing, Wang Lin suddenly felt a shift in his mood. He turned abruptly, looking up at the sky. He saw another person being pulled in and teleported here. After witnessing the failed attempt to ambush Wang Lin and the death of the attacker, the group of over 10 cultivators in the sky had grown fearful and dared not strike again. The newcomer was a woman dressed in white. Her long black hair cascaded to her waist, and her beauty was unmatched, though her aura was cold as ice. When Wang Lin saw her, his pupils contracted. Her appearance was strikingly similar to that of the middle-aged scholar he had seen outside the crack earlier. The woman in white also noticed Wang Lin. Their gazes met, and in that moment, a drastic change occurred in the ancient tomb. The dim sky suddenly filled with muffled thunderous roars, growing louder as they approached. It was like a raging roar, shaking the very heavens and earth. Below, the mist that formed the land began to churn violently, as if countless evil dragons were roaming inside, stirring the mist like furious ocean waves. At that moment, the entire world seemed to transform, as if a hidden room, which had been opened by accident, had its window slammed shut. The air grew suffocating, with no wind left to flow through. In the ancient star of antiquity, the cracks within the mist closed rapidly, healing completely and disappearing without a trace. Only the mist remained, still lingering around, as if eternal. The ancient burial ground had been sealed. As the cracks vanished, Wang Lin, who was standing in the tomb, immediately felt an intense sense of danger surge from his heart. Below, the churning mist suddenly gave rise to a Tinjong-wide rotating mist pillar that shot into the sky. A cultivator failed to evade it and was instantly engulfed by the mist, dying with a scream as the number on their forehead turned into a flashing rune that drifted to the side. This sudden change caused an uproar among the hundreds of cultivators around. At that instant, some of the floating platforms with the heads on them had their protective barriers vanish. The protective barriers on 99 platforms disappeared. At the same time, dozens of mist pillars surged up from below, and any cultivator they touched was killed in an agonizing manner, with the number on their forehead turning into floating runes. Directly beneath Wang Lin, another mist pillar surged up with a deafening roar. Its speed was so fast that it almost reached Wang Lin in the blink of an eye. Without hesitation, Wang Lin stepped forward, directly stepping onto the platform that had lost its protective barrier. As his feet touched the platform, the mist pillar shot past the platform's edge and raced into the sky, yet it caused no harm to Wang Lin. Wang Lin was not the only one with quick wits. As he stepped onto the platform to evade the mist pillar, many other cultivators swerved and rushed toward the nearest platform, eager to take shelter. However, with only 99 platforms having lost their protective barriers, the rest remained intact. This led to chaos as many cultivators rushed to the same platform. In the distance, Wang Lin saw 2 cultivators simultaneously land on one platform. Just as they thought they had escaped the mist, a massive mist pillar of 1,000 zhang burst forth from below, enveloping the platform. The platform, along with the ancient demon head and the 2 cultivators, disintegrated into nothingness. This was a power capable of destroying all the cultivators in the area. Even a third-step great power would die if struck by it. This scene was not a one-time occurrence. In the chaos, over 50 platforms simultaneously had 2 or more cultivators on them. Thunderous explosions filled the air as mist pillars erupted from below, almost flooding the entire realm, leaving all the onlookers horrified. Wang Lin's eyes narrowed sharply, and without hesitation, he formed a seal with his hands and waved them. Immediately, A wave of energy spread out from his body, surrounding the thousand-zhang platform beneath him and preventing anyone from stepping onto it. However, nearly 200 cultivators remained, and with no protective power, there were only 43 platforms left where they could stand. If they couldn't secure a platform, they would be killed by the ever-increasing roar of the mist rising from below. To survive, they had no choice but to fight for a platform, and they had to act fast. Otherwise, if two people stepped onto the same platform simultaneously, it would be destroyed along with everything on it. At this moment, more than 10 cultivators, their eyes bloodshot with rage, were charging directly toward Wang Lin's platform, desperate to seize it. It was a fight to the death. Either they lived or they died together. What might be tender, loving vows in the mortal world, here seemed wholly out of place. Anyone who could occupy a platform alone in the first wave, aside from the few incredibly lucky ones, was mostly either a powerful cultivator or someone ruthless in their methods. Some, with deep cunning, though they hadn't predicted the situation in advance, had carefully slain anyone who might compete for the platform with them. Now that it was clear that only those who stood alone on a platform could survive, the hundreds of cultivators without platforms were all red-eyed and desperate. For their lives, they were willing to fight to the death, even against their own kin. In an instant, the hundreds of cultivators rushed toward the 43 platforms. Amidst the chaos, Wang Lin had no time to check which cultivators had secured the other 42 platforms. With a wave of his hands and a flick of his seal, the energy spread around him, forming a protective barrier to stop the 10 or so cultivators charging at him. These cultivators, the strongest of whom was an elderly man at the fourth decay of heaven and man, varied in strength, but the weakest was at the late pure nirvana stage. Though they were not the pinnacle of cultivation, under the threat of life and death, they unleashed all their potential and rushed from every direction toward Wang Lin's platform. With a thunderous roar, their divine abilities collided with Wang Lin's energy barrier. The barrier shook and twisted, while the cultivators unleashed everything they had, even bringing out magical artifacts. It was a race against time. Wang Lin's eyes flashed with killing intent. With a cold snort, he flicked his hand outward, summoning a massive palm imprint that swept around him. From a distance, the imprint spun, forming a giant vortex. Booming sounds shook the heavens. As the palm imprint swept through, it blew away the majority of the cultivators, sending them tumbling backward, their attacks scattering in the wind. The mist sea raged as columns of mist shot up into the sky. Many cultivators outside Wang Lin's platform, along with those fighting for the other platforms, screamed in agony as they were crushed by the mist, dying instantly. The stench of blood filled the air, and the echoes of their screams only fueled the madness of the hundreds of cultivators with no platform to stand on. Growling and howling, they rushed frantically toward the platforms. After several of the 10 cultivators died, only 9 remained, their eyes bloodshot with fury. They rushed toward Wang Lin, flashing various magical artifacts and unleashing divine abilities. Wang Lin's eyes turned cold. Without a word, he stepped forward, quickly closing the distance between him and a middle-aged cultivator. The middle-aged man, his face twisted in rage, immediately sent out a glowing sword from his mouth aimed at Wang Lin. This man appeared to be at the first decay of heaven and man. As the glowing sword shot toward him, Wang Lin's right hand moved faster than the sword itself, and his fingers landed on the man's forehead. Primordial energy surged into the man's body, and with a loud explosion, the cultivator's physical body collapsed, his divine soul shattered. Yet his body didn't disintegrate. Instead, it turned into a blood mist, which Wang Lin absorbed into his own body. In the blink of an eye, Wang Lin avoided the incoming glowing sword and moved to the side, appearing behind an elderly man with white hair. The old man was about to turn, but with a casual lift of Wang Lin's left hand, he struck the old man's back. With a loud bang, the old man's body disintegrated into blood mist, which was swiftly absorbed by Wang Lin. Wang Lin licked his lips and shifted again, this time appearing beside a young cultivator. The young man, pale and terrified, immediately began retreating, spitting out a mouthful of blood. The blood transformed in midair into a massive blood-red skull, which roared silently as it sped toward Wang Lin to devour him. Instead of dodging, Wang Lin charged straight at the young cultivator. Just as the blood-red skull was about to engulf him, Wang Lin's eyes glinted with a strange light, and with a low roar, he surged forward. The low growl, despite the deafening roar of the surrounding mist and the fierce battle raging with countless cultivators fighting, seemed to crush all sound, overwhelming everything else. The earth-shattering roar from Wang Lin took precedence over all noise, shaking the very heavens and the earth. The blood-red skull trembled violently, yet under this roar, it was swept away by an unstoppable gale, immediately dissipating into a chilling mist. The wind swept forward, charging toward the retreating young cultivator. With no time to react, he had no means to dodge. In an instant, he was engulfed by the furious wind, his body crumbling to dust and vanishing into a cloud of blood smoke. Clean and decisive, 3 people were killed in one strike. However, the slaughter didn't cease. The remaining 6, having witnessed it all, knew that retreat meant death. They had no choice but to move in. With gritted teeth, they took advantage of Wang Lin's temporary absence from the platform, rushing to step onto it. Courting death. Wang Lin's voice was cold. Had these 6 chosen to leave, he might have spared them, but their stubbornness drove him to take action. As he stepped forward, his right hand raised, he pointed 3 times. In an instant, a massive sword chi surged, as millions of sword energies howled out from his fingers, splitting into 3 parts, targeting the 3 fastest cultivators. Among them were 2 men and 1 woman. The sword chi was too fast, and within moments, it was upon them. The middle-aged man, desperate, contorted his face in agony. He bent over and performed an unusual movement, his hands reaching downward as if grasping the void itself. The instant the sword energy approached, he roared, lifting both hands in a fierce motion. A loud crash echoed as a purple light screen appeared out of thin air, conjured by his hands, becoming a massive barrier to block the incoming sword chi. But with a blast, the man spat blood, his body flying backward. The barrier shattered, and the sword chi, now unstoppable, slammed into him. His body trembled and then shattered completely. The middle-aged woman, her face ashen, attempted to dodge. Though her cultivation wasn't high, her speed was astonishing, otherwise, she wouldn't have reached the platform before others. In a desperate attempt, she barely managed to shift half her body in time, but the sword chi grazed her. Her right shoulder shattered into bloody pieces, but she narrowly avoided death. The sword energy missed her but struck the cultivator behind her, a man whose face twisted in pain before he died instantly. Of the 3, 1 was dead, 1 was injured, and the final cultivator, the elderly man suffering from the 4th decay of heaven and man, made his move. With his hands forming a seal, 9 black dragons appeared, roaring and rapidly spinning around his body. The sound of thunder echoed as the dragons swirled faster, and with a roar, the old man pushed backward. As he retreated, his right hand reached out to seize a cultivator nearby, dragging him in front to block the attack. The sword chi surged into the body of the cultivator, tearing him apart. In the blink of an eye, Wang Lin had killed another 3. Now, on the platform, only 3 cultivators remained. Wang Lin, dressed in pure white robes, with a few bloodstains, stepped back onto the platform where he had stood earlier. His gaze swept over the remaining 3, and he coldly spoke. Scram. The female cultivator, who had lost her right arm, was pale. While death was terrifying in this moment, the fear in her heart was far greater. To her, that white-robed, white-haired figure was an insurmountable mountain. She didn't want to die. She had no choice but to retreat, hoping to seize another platform. The elderly man suffering from the 4th decay of heaven and man also turned pale. Without hesitation, he began to retreat. The last remaining cultivator, the weakest among them, wasn't quick enough to escape Wang Lin's killing intent. His soul trembled with fear as he fled. Suddenly, a loud crash sounded from the distance. 1,000 zhang mist surged, covering the platform where 6 cultivators had stepped onto. In an instant, all 6 were obliterated. The mist reappeared on another platform, annihilating it as well. In a short span, out of 43 platforms, only 28 remained. Hundreds of cultivators, who had nowhere to retreat to, dwindled down to fewer than 80. Wang Lin stood on the platform, his gaze cold and unyielding. Around him, no cultivators dared approach. The previous scenes of massacre had already shocked everyone to the core. As his gaze swept over the remaining platforms, his eyes fell upon the girl from the Annihilation clan. She had claimed a platform, sitting cross-legged with a soft light flickering from her forehead, enveloping her platform. Despite the surrounding cultivators' attacks, the light flickered but didn't collapse. Apart from her, 5 other cultivators caught Wang Lin's attention. The first was the white-robed woman with hair that reached her waist. She stood silently, gazing into the distance. Any cultivator who approached her platform screamed in agony before they could even step on it, their eyes bleeding black blood and their bodies emitting dark energy, as if poisoned. Another was a middle-aged cultivator, dressed in plain robes, holding a wine pot in his left hand and a 7-foot-long sword in his right. The ancient proverb says, 3 cups of sincere promise, the 5 sacred mountains light as a feather. The middle-aged cultivator took a sip of wine, casually swung his right-hand sword, and without any noticeable movement, the tip of his sword pierced the forehead of a cultivator rushing at him. As he withdrew the sword, blood spurted from the dead cultivator's forehead, falling onto the platform, forming a plum blossom pattern. On the platform, more than 10 blood-colored plum blossoms bloomed suddenly. Another figure, a man in purple robes, had a grim expression and was surrounded by a sinister aura. With a wave of his sleeve, a massive ferocious fish over 1,000 feet long appeared behind him. The fish, reeking of blood and wind, devoured every nearby cultivator, swallowing them whole. The final 2 were equally striking. One was tall and thin, dressed in black, with his eyes closed at all times. His movements were so swift that even Wang Lin had difficulty catching a clear glimpse of him. His flashing figure left behind afterimages, but each cultivator near him let out a dying scream as they fell. Each death came with their essence spirit being sucked out, while their bodies plummeted into the misty sea below. In his hand was a small abacus. With a flick of his wrist, the crisp sound of the beads clacking echoed through the air. "Not worth it. Not worth it," the plump cultivator muttered, shaking his head as the fat on his face trembled. He raised his hand, and countless restrictions emerged, falling onto the crazy cultivators charging toward him. With each restriction that landed, the cultivators trembled as though all their abilities were sealed, and they were dragged into the misty sea below. Although only 28 platforms remained, 7 of them had been successfully breached by outer cultivators. After several bloody battles, they were eventually seized. Those who succeeded in taking these platforms were no ordinary cultivators. Among these 7 successful platforms was one that caught Wang Lin's attention. Surprisingly, it was the 4th Decay Elder from the Heavenly Decay, who had fled in fear at Wang Lin's single word. The other 5 were no slouches either, coming from different clans, their killing intent like that of gods of death. One of them, however, stood out for her simplicity in the battle. This was an old woman dressed in green robes, her face covered in bumps that made her appear terrifying. She walked past a group of more than 10 cultivators fighting fiercely on a platform. As she approached, they all became dazed, and one by one, they backed away, clearing the platform for her. Even the previous owner of the platform, lost in confusion, left, allowing the old woman to sit there undisturbed. The misty sea rumbled as the mist pillars increased in number. The battles that had just erupted seemed to end abruptly. Only 28 platforms remained, and the hundreds of cultivators who had surrounded them were all dead, some shattered into bloody pulp, others sunk into the misty sea. The scene that had just unfolded, though brief, was a brutal elimination, killing over 90% of the hundreds of cultivators, leaving only these 28. Wang Lin remained calm, sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, breathing deeply as he transformed the blood and essence spirits of the devoured cultivators into healing energy. Up until now, he hadn't revealed much of his abilities, not his identity as an illusory flame cultivator, nor his numerous divine techniques, nor even his magical artifacts. This place was full of danger and unpredictability. The threats didn't just come from the tomb, but also from the cultivators around him. It was essential to maintain an air of mystery, only revealing his power when necessary to establish dominance. The cultivators on the surrounding platforms also let out a collective breath, quickly engaging in their own deep breathing techniques. But there was an undercurrent of tension, as most of them stayed alert, watching each other carefully. Though the recent battle had been short, everyone had seen each other's abilities in action. Just as Wang Lin had been closely observing several individuals earlier, many cultivators now had their eyes on him. Wang Lin's clean and efficient killing of 6 cultivators had drawn attention, especially the low growl that suppressed all other sounds and shattered the body of a cultivator undergoing the Heavenly Decay tribulation. This display of power made everyone watching Wang Lin wary. This person didn't reveal much of his power in the last battle. It's hard to tell his true abilities. The man in purple robes, with the giant fish behind him, sat cross-legged, his gaze sweeping over Wang Lin. His expression remained dark and brooding. One roar shattered the opponent's techniques and dissolved their body. It seems his powers have something to do with sound. A fierce-looking cultivator who had successfully taken a platform narrowed his eyes at Wang Lin, an ominous glint appearing in his gaze. Others only noticed how ruthless he was, and the power behind that roar, but they overlooked the fact that, when he killed just now, he devoured the blood mist. Such demonic arts have been appearing more and more frequently in the ancient star of antiquity in recent years. The corpulent, oversized official gave a squinty smile as his gaze swept over Wang Lin, the abacus in his hand clicking rhythmically. He definitely intends to kill me. I must find help as soon as possible. In the distance, the girl from the Annihilation clan looked pale, biting her lower lip, the fear in her eyes growing deeper. This is someone you can't afford to provoke. He didn't kill me earlier. I'm now in his debt. The elder at the fourth heavenly decay, spared by Wang Lin, kept his head lowered, his eyes filled with fear. The battle just now remained vivid in his mind. The long-haired woman in white quietly withdrew her gaze from the distance. Turning to look at Wang Lin, she hesitated, then looked away again, her expression calm, lost in thought. While everyone was quietly observing each other and healing in silence, the surroundings gradually calmed. Even the churning mist sea seemed to settle. After a short period of recovery, some cultivators rose and made directly for the magical artifacts before the ancient heads on their platforms. Wang Lin opened his eyes. His right hand reached back into the void, and the 30-foot battle flag before the ancient god head was pulled into his grip. With a focused scan, he discerned it to be an ancient god artifact, though not an exceptional one. Without a change in expression, Wang Lin stowed it away and stood up. But just then, a sudden upheaval erupted. All 28 platforms shuddered with a thunderous rumble. The dim sky above roared again, lightning tearing through it as if to rip the heavens apart. In that very instant, just as many cultivators' expressions changed, the 28 platforms began to tremble violently. As they shook, they abruptly began to sink. The descent was rapid and offered no chance to react. In a mere instant, the platforms plunged more than 10,000 zhang. Wind howled around the edges of the platforms. The cultivators aboard felt a searing sense of being torn apart, like even their blood was being wrenched from their veins. Yet those who had survived the initial slaughter were mentally steeled. Even in the face of this sudden change, none cried out in alarm. All of them gritted their teeth and clung tight to the platforms as they plummeted downward in a frenzied dive. The sky grew farther and farther away. Around them, countless unopened platforms turned to distant black specks. In the blink of an eye, the 28 descending platforms plunged into the mist. Thunderous clouds of fog rolled around them, eventually swallowing them whole. Wang Lin's gaze turned solemn. He watched the mist envelop everything, keenly aware that the platform beneath him was descending like a plunge into the abyss of hell, with no end in sight. No one knew how long the descent lasted. Then, with a deafening boom, it came to a halt. All around was mist. Utter darkness. Nothing visible. At that very moment, a sense of danger suddenly surged through Wang Lin's soul. He spun around, right hand sweeping backward with a thunderous motion. The mist behind him violently reversed, revealing within it a grotesque beast face, monstrous and humanoid, covered in festering boils. Its claws were long and razor-sharp. The beast had been struck mid-air by Wang Lin's palm and was retreating rapidly, vanishing back into the mist in an instant. At the same time, a terrible scream rang out nearby. Clearly, one of the cultivators had been successfully ambushed. A gleam flashed in Wang Lin's eyes. He recognized the creature. Despite the slight differences in its appearance, it was strikingly similar to the bizarre being that had burst forth from the ancient godhead in the land of demonic spirits. With a cold snort, Wang Lin swept his arms wide. A fierce wind howled around him, forcefully blasting away the encroaching mist. He wasn't alone. Many cultivators acted similarly, using divine abilities to drive back the fog. Within moments, the mist within tens of thousands of zhang was blown away, creating a clear space. Of the 28 platforms, 3 now stood completely empty. A chilling aura lingered in the air. A coldness seeped from the bodies of the cultivators themselves. Beyond this clearing, everything was still engulfed in mist. Above, below, in every direction, only fog. Faint, wailing howls echoed from the mist all around them. Then, under Wang Lin and the others' watchful eyes, shadowy, distorted figures began to emerge from the fog. One by one, humanoid beasts revealed themselves, partially visible within the mist. There were so many that no one could tell how many there actually were. They were everywhere. Fellow Taoists, regardless of your clan or lineage, the fact that we've been teleported to the same place is a kind of fate. With the crisis before us, now's not the time to hold back. The old woman, well-versed in ancient texts, spoke with a hoarse voice, her words drifting out slowly. I am somewhat familiar with this ancient burial ground. Right now, we are still on the outer perimeter. Only those who survive the trial of entering the tomb will have the right to venture inside. As her voice fell, a series of furious roars erupted from the mist around them. The humanoid beast charged out of the mist, heading straight for the 25 cultivators standing on the 28 platforms. This sight was nothing short of shocking. The number of beasts was no less than several thousand. Wang Lin's gaze flickered. Within the beasts, he could sense a violent and turbulent emotion, an emotion that was the very trigger for igniting the illusory flames. Illusory flame cultivators, whether within or beyond the realms, were mysterious existences. Few cultivators had encountered them, but the terrifying and distinct signs of their divine powers were widely known in the outer realms, especially on the ancient stars. Because such cultivators were so rare, one appearing only once in tens of thousands of years, rumors had it that an illusory flame cultivator could rival a third-step great power and strength. These rumors had spread far and wide among the cultivators of the ancient stars. Among the present cultivators, all of whom were skilled, they had all heard the terrifying tales. The rumors said that an illusory flame cultivator, with a mere wave, could reduce thousands of soldiers to ashes. The rumors said that the gaze of an illusory flame cultivator would ignite the 7 emotions and 6 desires in all who looked upon it, making them utterly defenseless. The rumors said that an illusory flame cultivator, like a nightmare hidden in the mind, could set the enemy's emotions ablaze, burning them to death. The rumors said that when an illusory flame cultivator was enraged, they could ignite the fury of all and become the lone figure standing amidst the mountain of corpses, gazing at the heavens. Rumors, more rumors, just rumors. Except for the girl from the Annihilation clan, no one here knew. Not even the woman in white had any idea that the illusory flame cultivator was hidden among them. Before it was unleashed, the illusory flame was invisible. The ferocious expressions, the incredible speed, and the terrifying appearance of the humanoid beasts combined to form an immense pressure, thundering toward them. Compared to these thousands of beasts, the 25 cultivators, including Wang Lin, seemed as insignificant as a grain of sand in the vast ocean, ready to be overwhelmed at any moment. The humanoid beasts' cultivation varied. The strongest of them could reach the 3rd heavenly decay level, while the weakest still possessed the power of perfect shattered nirvana. Individually, they were not much of a threat, but with thousands of them charging forward at once, and their strange speed, they became a challenge. However, none of the cultivators here were weak. The moment the beasts charged, they unleashed their divine abilities and magical artifacts, striking out in a series of deafening attacks, cutting down the beasts. Wang Lin's expression remained calm. He raised his right hand, and millions of sword chi whistled from his fingertips. A sweeping storm of sword chi emerged, crashing through the air and turning into a sword storm that engulfed all the beasts charging toward him, shredding them into pieces. But at the moment the beasts perished, their bodies flickered with red light. Even though they had been torn apart by the sword storm, they exploded with a devastating force, creating a loud boom as they self-destructed. The power of their self-detonations was multiple times that of their own cultivation, and when many of them exploded at once, the ear-splitting sound overwhelmed everything. The shock waves reverberated throughout the mist, spreading endlessly. Wang Lin had killed several dozen beasts. At that moment, as they all exploded simultaneously, the resulting shockwave was equivalent to the full force strike of a 5th heavenly decay cultivator. Wang Lin's eyes flashed. As the explosive force from the beast's self-destructions rushed toward him, a flood of white light suddenly appeared around him, quickly forming a massive light shadow behind him. This light shadow enveloped his body, radiating an intense brightness. Just as the explosive force of the beasts rushed toward him, the two forces collided in a thunderous crash. The light shadow twisted but did not shatter. Instead, it grew even brighter, reflecting all the destructive power, sweeping out in all directions. The second wave of beasts, charging toward Wang Lin, were immediately affected by the reflected power. One by one, they collapsed with blood-curdling screams, but their destruction only triggered even more powerful self-explosions. Layers of violent shockwaves surged outward, forming a storm around Wang Lin. The self-detonation force grew stronger and stronger, sweeping toward Wang Lin. He remained calm as the light shadow around him shone even brighter. The sudden brightness of the light concealed a flicker of emotion in his eyes, hiding his expression from all who watched. Wang Lin's heart trembled. Not all the beasts had the chance to self-destruct before dying. Some of them had been killed before they could even explode. Whenever that happened, a surge of white energy would enter his body. This white energy was not the power of the ancient gods, but rather a force of life. The life force entered his body and immediately transformed into part of his healing process, even faster than when cultivators use their own energy to heal. Licking his lips, Wang Lin's eyes flashed, and with a sudden step, he left his platform and charged directly toward the fierce beasts. Not far away, the other cultivators were resisting, but a few were caught off guard by the self-explosion of the fierce beasts. They were blown back, spewing blood, and as they tried to fight back, they were surrounded by more fierce beasts, which self-exploded again, creating even more powerful impacts that utterly destroyed them. The one who seemed to face the least difficulty was the woman in white. Her expression remained calm, and there was no sign of her using any special abilities. She stood quietly as the fierce beasts neared her. The moment any beast came close, black mist erupted from her body, and blood poured from her 7 orifices as the beasts screamed in retreat. Wang Lin moved like lightning. He was the first among the 25 cultivators to break through and charge into the group of fierce beasts. His actions immediately attracted the attention of everyone in the battle. Wang Lin ignored the gazes that swept toward him. As he moved forward, he neared a group of charging fierce beasts. Raising his right hand, thousands of sword chi whistled through the air, slicing through the beasts' bodies, entering them, and creating a thunderous roar. Before they could self-explode, Wang Lin had killed a portion of them, and white energy surged toward him, which he absorbed into his body. The vigorous life force was absorbed by his essence spirit, and his injuries healed slightly. Wang Lin experienced the benefits and, using the recoil force, retreated, quickly appearing at the outer edge of a group of fierce beasts that had surrounded a cultivator. With a flick of his fingers, his right hand formed a sword with 2 fingers and struck a beast. As the beast perished, Wang Lin moved like a swimming fish, evading the blast. Booms echoed continuously, and in the blink of an eye, all the fierce beasts were annihilated. The cultivators who had been surrounded by the beasts, now filled with despair, immediately felt a surge of hope. Their gazes turned to Wang Lin, full of gratitude. Wang Lin didn't acknowledge them. He turned and dashed toward the distance. Time passed quickly. Wang Lin's movements made all the cultivators here unable to ignore him. Wherever he appeared, the fierce beasts were swiftly killed, and then he moved on to the next location. The middle-aged cultivator holding a wine jug in his left hand and a sword in his right was the next to act. A flash of sword light pierced through a fierce beast's forehead. Laughing loudly, he faced 100 or so more beasts. He lifted the wine jug to his lips and took a large sip, preparing to cast a divine ability. A dazzling white light flashed as Wang Lin's figure appeared like lightning, getting close in a few blinks. The sound of explosions echoed, and more than half of the 100 beasts perished. After absorbing the life force, Wang Lin took a step back and left. The middle-aged cultivator furrowed his brow, muttering a few words, but his gaze suddenly sharpened as he noticed something strange. He wasn't the only one who noticed. Many of the cultivators, all shrewd and calculating, immediately saw the issue when observing Wang Lin's actions. If we kill these humanoid beasts before they self-explode, the life force will enter our bodies. Not only does it heal injuries, but it also boosts cultivation, almost like meditating for several days. By the time they understood, Wang Lin had already slain nearly 1,000 fierce beasts himself, and another 30% had been killed in the self-explosions caused by the others' battles. The remaining 1,000 beasts gathered densely into a mass, and Wang Lin's figure shot out like lightning, reaching them ahead of the others. Behind him, aside from the girl from the Annihilation clan who dared not leave her platform and the woman in white who remained unfazed, the other cultivators were visibly moved. To them, these 1,000 beasts had become like powerful medicinal pills. They rushed forward in more than 20 streams of light, eager to beat Wang Lin to the prize. This white-clad friend, since we are in the same group, we can't let you face these 1,000 beasts alone. Let's join forces. Friend, wait. These 1,000 beasts are dangerous, and their self-explosions have immense power. Be careful. That white-clad cultivator. I don't care what the others do, but leave 300 of these beasts for me. Shouting voices rang out as more than 20 cultivators increased their speed, racing after Wang Lin. Wang Lin's expression remained unchanged. With a cold smile, just as he neared the 1,000 fierce beasts, the ancient god star mark on his forehead flickered faintly. From the first star, a shadowy light suddenly shot out. Wang Lin's hands formed a seal, and he waved outward. The celestial emperor furnace appeared with a rumble, enveloping the 1,000 fierce beasts charging toward him. The immense furnace materialized, surrounded by an ancient, storm-like aura, transforming into a massive vortex that swept everything in its path. Refine. As the cultivators neared, Wang Lin let out a low growl. A single word left his mouth, and the celestial emperor furnace roared. Inside, nearly 1,000 fierce beasts suddenly screamed in agony. Before they could self-destruct, the furnace became murky, and an ancient divine aura filled the air. In the blink of an eye, to the astonishment of the 20 or so cultivators, the enormous celestial emperor furnace, as if becoming a tangible entity, suddenly shrank under the resounding crash of heaven and earth, transforming into a wisp of shadow light, disappearing into Wang Lin's brow. All of this transpired in the blink of an eye. Almost instantly, Wang Lin had gathered all of the nearly 1,000 fierce beasts, leaving none behind. As he turned, Wang Lin's expression remained cold. He glanced at the cultivators who had caught up. Within their bodies, he sensed intense emotional fluctuations. Taking a step, he returned to his platform. With a flick of his sleeve, a powerful cultivation aura burst forth, shaking the surroundings. The more than 20 cultivators glared at him with ill intent, yet they hesitated, mindful of Wang Lin's cultivation level. None dared to strike first. From a distance, the girl from the Annihilation clan stirred, sensing an opportunity. She gritted her teeth, preparing to move forward, but at that moment, Wang Lin's cold gaze fell upon her. The girl's mind shook, her face turning pale. She froze, not daring to move a step. Moments later, the cultivators returned to their respective platforms, briefly letting the matter pass. However, their occasional glances at Wang Lin were filled with clear hostility. Only the woman in white revealed a hint of admiration in her eyes, giving Wang Lin a slight nod. At that moment, the platforms the group stood on trembled violently. After a brief pause, they rushed forward, the thunderous roar echoing in their ears. The 20 or so platforms sped off into the mist ahead, disappearing from view. This humanoid beast is invaluable for healing my wounds. No one shall take it from me. Wang Lin stood calmly on the platform, his expression betraying no hint of thought. Yet, his eyes flashed with a cold gleam, and from within his brow, the celestial emperor furnace unleashed waves of vibrant life force, constantly flowing into him, rapidly healing his injuries. It's time to establish my prestige. An ethereal flame flickered, barely perceptible, in his left eye, gradually growing fiercer.